In today's episode, we will be covering Oppenheimer and how he helped develop the first atomic bomb. A story of how a depressed, skinny nerd made one of the most lethal weapons mankind has ever seen. If video podcasts aren't your thing, I don't know, just go watch the film. I watched it while being wine drunk, I wouldn't recommend that. Julius Robert Oppenheimer was born in New York City on April 22nd, 1904. I don't know why he doesn't like using his real name. I think in the film he just says the J stands for nothing. Already bit of a weird bloke. His mum was a painter and his dad was a textile importer. Is that actually important to making a nuke? Probably not. Never mind, his dad was actually called Julius, so I'm guessing Oppenheimer had some daddy issues. But to begin with, Oppenheimer wasn't interested in nuclear physics. He spent his school years enjoying English and French literature and mineralogy. In his final year of school is where he found his passion for chemistry. Bit fucking weird. When I was in school, you just liked Xbox, riding a bike, playing football, standard stuff. But as Oppenheimer was about to reach the peak of his education, he was struck down with colitis. Basically, his arse got swollen, and through his recovery, developed his love of horseback riding. If I had a swollen arse, the last thing I want to do is ride a horse. He's just a weird guy, this Oppenheimer. So because of this delay in his education, when he joined Harvard College to study chemistry, he had to study other subjects alongside. Harvard required students to study, history, literature, philosophy or maths. No clue what he studied, to be honest. Wikipedia doesn't say, so I guess he had to do all of them. Oppenheimer graduates from Harvard and goes to Christ College in Cambridge. Is that actually just Cambridge? No idea. We're not fact checking any of this. And when he gets to Christ College, he basically begs to get into some lab there. It's probably in the film. However, one guy says, this fucking Oppenheimer guy is fucking shit in the lab. Do not bring him in. But somehow, Oppenheimer manages to get in, and he instantly hates it. He finds it so boring, he tried to poison his teacher. But he put cyanide on an apple. It's probably in the film. I'm just going to keep referencing the film, because it's probably way more interesting than the Wikipedia page. Poisoning a teacher, a bit extreme in my opinion, but this is the 1920s. There's no TikTok or Pornhub, so a man needs hobbies and interests. But clearly Oppenheimer isn't all with it. He's a chain smoker, he hardly ate, suffers from depression. To be honest, standard university experience in my opinion. He has this friend called Francis, who, he tries to be a good mate. He sees that Oppenheimer is depressed, and they hang out one day and he's like, hey man, I know you're feeling down, but I just got engaged, isn't that great? And Oppenheimer, in the heat of the moment, just decides to jump on him and try and strangle him. I just came back from a stag do this weekend myself. I didn't do that to my friend, so clearly I'm better than Oppenheimer. Do not let this man near a nuke, in my opinion. Oppenheimer travels to Germany in 1926 to study physics, and under the guidance of Max Born. Who's that? Probably this guy in the film. And he earned some degree in 1927. From this, Born and Oppenheimer published some paper about nuclear motion. It's probably what their most popular thing, but I got a D in physics in my GCSEs, so I'm not reading that. Go read that yourself. Later that year, Oppenheimer moved to California and spent his time bouncing between Caltech and Harvard. To be honest, all of this is fucking boring, so we're skipping it. But during this time, Oppenheimer and his brother buy a ranch in New Mexico. Oppenheimer gets all giddy and says hot dog and calls the ranch El Hot Doggo, or whatever it is in Spanish. A bit cringe in my opinion. How this man got laid is a mystery to me. He got with Emily Blunt and Florence Pugh. Do not let this man near people getting engaged. Do not let this man near women. Do not let this man near nuclear bombs. I say it now in hindsight, but if I could travel back in time, he is stopped. He must be stopped. Oppenheimer, fucking hell, this name is too fucking long to say. Oppie starts teaching at Berkeley. He gets his name Oppie from fucking teaching in Dutch or something like that. He somehow wings his way, and the Dutch call him Oppie. Fun fact. So he's in Berkeley. It's probably fucking here in California. This isn't Mad Men or whatever, so fuck it. And the people at Berkeley say he's either an idiot or pretentious. Quite a spectrum. Either they love him or hate him, kind of like the Marmite of nerds. At this time, there's some more fucking boring science stuff, blah blah blah. During the 1920s, Oppenheimer says that he is apolitical. That's a red flag in my opinion. If you have that on your Hinge profile, I am not clicking yes. But during the change in the world order, the rise of Nazism, blah, etc., World War II almost kicking off, Oppie gets a bit more political. He starts supporting German physicists getting out of Nazi Germany, hosts fundraisers for the Spanish Republican cause, and even joined the American Committee for Democracy and Intellectual Freedom. But like most liberal groups during this time, they were all brand communism. Not quite the peak of the Red Scare that comes in McCarthyism, 1950s, after World War II. But, America's a bit cautious about communism. To be fair, at this time, most of Oppie's mates were members of the Communist Party. You had his brother, his brother's wife, his wife's brother's boyfriend's wife, his landlady, some students he's teaching, Kitty Pewing, and Jean Tadlock. Keep an eye on those two ladies, we will be talking about them later. However, historically, people say he didn't join the Communist Party, while other people say he did. Apparently he even admitted it himself. Sadly, we can't ask him because he's dead. However, this does not stop the FBI. They open up a case about Oppie because he basically went to this party where a communist dude was. So the FBI seem to think he probably is a communist. Look, I live in London. Any party you go to probably has one commie there. Let bygones be bygones, as they say. Alright, Kitty and Jean, Oppie's lovers. Emily Blunt and Florence Pugh in that one film. Do they look like the counterparts? Not really. Nolan does not have an eye for accurate casting, in my opinion, but this isn't a film podcast, so Oppie was dating, shagging, fucking whatever, Jean for a few years, then she broke up with him. A few months later, he met Kitty, who was a married woman, but Oppie couldn't keep it in his trousers. Neither could Kitty, to be honest. I think that's a fair bit of finger pointing. We blame both parties. They both shag for a bit. Kitty divorces her husband to be with Oppie, and their lives remain perfect. Not really, if you've seen the film. Oppie is a fucking old dog and goes back to Florence Pugh for a bit. Quotes the Bhagavad Gita whilst doing it. Bit weird in my opinion. I have the book in my flat. Didn't make me horny. He's clearly got some weird kinks, mass murdering, shagging and quoting scripture. Again, not kink shaming here, you do what you want within boundaries and consent, but I don't know, read 50 Shades or Heated Rivalry if you want to spice up your love life. Or, don't cheat on your wife. I've never cheated, so I'm a better man than Oppenheimer. 2-0 to me. I've got women who are going through a divorce, so maybe me and Oppie have a lot more in common than I realised. Moving out the 30s, it's the 1940s now. What did you expect? They fucking lead on to each other. And World War II has kicked off. Germany has invaded Poland, the UK and France have declared war, Oppenheimer gets briefed that the UK is creating an atomic bomb program. This news is so big that President Roosevelt says, "Gimme, I want my own," and starts a US-led program, even though they haven't even entered the war yet. So, classic America. Always keen for stuff, but never wants to participate. Ernest Lawrence, he comes into frame. That's Josh Hartnett in the film. Comes in and he's like, "Oppie, we want you on the project." So Oppenheimer, his name's too long again. Oppie begins doing some theories and shit about atomic stuff. And a year later, the US Army establishes the Manhattan Engineer District, basically turning all the nerdy shit into a big military operation. Matt Damon brings on Cillian Murphy, and the pair start working on the Manhattan Project. But there's some concerns at the time. Oppie, Robert Julius, what his fucking name is, hasn't actually worked on big projects, and also might have been a communist. America, they're fine with bringing in Nazi dudes if they want to go to space, but will firmly draw on the line of communists. That's the American way. Oppie and Groves decided this sort of project needed to be kept secret, and moved the Manhattan Project to a remote location. The Los Alamos Laboratory was born. Groves and some other army dudes couldn't decide on who should lead the project, and they just ended up picking Oppenheimer to be head of Los Alamos. Groves liked Oppie's ambition for the project, and thought he would help drive the project to the finishing line. Spoiler alert, it did. Groves and Oppie scouted out some locations, and settled on New Mexico, as there was a bit of flat land, and some school buildings nearby. Because this was a military thing, Oppie decided to take the army physical test, to get into character, and failed, straight away, with doctors saying he was too skinny and too sick. The flatlands of New Mexico were quickly developed into labs, homes, and other buildings, as Oppie wanted everyone to stay in one location. With the war brewing on, there was tension in the air. Some scientists were anxious that Germany were developing their own nuclear weapons, and were ahead of the Manhattan Project. The start of the Manhattan Project focused on a plutonium fusion weapon. No idea what that really is, but they realised that it was quickly unsuitable. Moving into 1944, this was a heavy year for Oppie. Jean, Oppie's former lover, passed away from suicide. Whether or not this was legit is up for speculation, But her death caused great grief for Oppie, and at this time, the Manhattan Project had shifted towards an implosion-type weapon, using uranium and plutonium. Again, no fucking idea what any of this means, but they made the bomb, or they almost made the bomb. And 1 year later, they tested the world's first nuclear weapon. Due to rain, the explosion was delayed a few hours, and finally, on July the 16th, 1945, at 5:30 am, the bomb was dropped. It was attached to a 30-meter high tower and produced over 25 kilotons of energy, resulting in a mushroom cloud that was almost 8 miles long. Though in later interviews and shit, Oppie said he had thought of the Bhagavad Gita, horny bastard, during the launch. But his brother is quoted in saying, "My brother said, I guess it worked," after the explosion. A bit anticlimactic in my opinion, but Oppie believed the bomb wouldn't have even made Japan surrender, and also regretted not using it against Germany, so... With the world order now changed again, 2 versions of the nuke were dropped on Japan, leading to Japan's surrender. The resulting damage in Hiroshima and Nagasaki led to over 100,000 deaths, causing Oppie to believe he had blood on his hands. I mean, rightfully so. After the Manhattan Project, Oppie returned to teaching, leaving behind Ruth Tolman. Apparently he was having another affair at Los Alamos, so how does he have so much riz, this guy? However, he quickly realised his passion for teaching was gone, resulting in him moving into a director role for the Institution for Advanced Studies. Oppie continued doing talks about nuclear weapons, about science, etc., but those commie accusations came back. In 1949, Oppie testified against them. To be fucking honest, these are all in the film, it's the whole centre thing about the film, but let's go watch that. And Oppie was cleared of being disloyal. However, many people believed he was still a security risk. During the closing years of his life, Oppie still continued talking about, science, nuclear weapons, going on and on about them, probably how bad he felt, blah, blah, blah. He still had anxiety over it, he had this weird heavy burden about it. And in 1965, after years of chain smoking, Oppie was diagnosed with throat cancer. After unsuccessful treatments to manage the illness, a year later, Oppenheimer died in his sleep, aged 62. From baby to man to death, Oppenheimer has affected the way our world is today. The threat of nuclear war still looms. Was he a mad genius or just a misunderstood skinny boy? Well, we can't ask him because he died like fucking 60 years ago.